Lumbering through the armies of Warhammer 40k's various factions are constructs and creatures that herald unimaginable levels of destruction. These titanic units dominate the battlefield and embody the very aspect of war in the grim, dark future. From horrifying spider-like Xenos to the god engines of the Adeptus Mechanicus, we're going to take a look at some of the most popular titanic units in Warhammer 40k and figure out which one ranks above all the others. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Starhammer. Figuring out where all these go on the list is going to be a little bit of a challenge, so I hope you're up to it. We're going to rank these based on their stats and how cool they are aesthetically. I don't want to say these units are totally invalid to have on the board, as you should always run what you think is cool, but a lot of them aren't very practical. With that out of the way, I want to start the list off strong with a Tyranid Hierophant Biotitan. Now, I've only ever seen one of these IRL one time, and that was a game between me, Eldar, and Tyranids. Eldar won that game, to the surprise of nobody, but seeing a Hierophant in action was truly a sight to behold. It's got a pretty tasty stat block with 12 inches of movement, 14 toughness, 2 up save, 5 up invuln, 30 wounds, 8 up leadership, and 12 OC. As you can see, it doesn't have a ton of weapons, but what it lacks in variety, it makes up for in lethality. Though its ranged weapons aren't crazy, they are consistent when it comes to damage, and you've got that flamer equivalent for anti-infantry, and the cannons for AT. What really screams at you in the face is the melee profile, however. It gets 2 melee weapons that it can swing with. The pods are pretty good for mopping up infantry, but those talons at strength 20 and 8 attacks are usually going to rip through most tanks and heavy units. Its abilities aren't that great though. It adds 1 to the hit roll against battle shock units, as well as being able to move through and over terrain in models less than 4 inches in height as if they weren't there, which makes sense seeing how big it is. Oddly enough, it also functions as a transport, able to carry up to 20 Tyranid infantry models. Note that infantry keyword. That allows you a wide breadth of units to stick in this dude's Tyrannussy for transport, but each one with more than 1 wound takes up 3 slots. For a whopping 810 points, the Hierophant is a very expensive transport unit that punches very, very hard. It'll certainly command respect on the board and allow you to cheese that transport rule for disembark, but I think it's a bit much. I mean, in general, it takes up half the goddamn board after all. That said, how does it stack up for rank? Stats-wise, it's pretty solid, but in my experience, it folded pretty quickly the more it had to rely on that invuln save. It doesn't have that many weapon options like a Knight or Storm Surge, but I guess it doesn't really need them for what it's supposed to do. The damage is relatively consistent, minus the talons and the d6+1. Few things are as heartbreaking as wounding on all 8 strength, 20 attacks and rolling all 1s. Granted, that's still 16 wounds, and that's enough to one-tap pretty much anything, but still, nobody likes to see 1s. It makes shit significantly less cool. The transport aspect is neat, like I said, but with everything but gaunts taking up 3 slots, you're not going to stack too much in there. That said, you do have a lot of options to load up. Aesthetically, 10 out of 10. This thing kicks ass. It's absolutely terrifying and towers over literally everything on the field. I'll put this guy in the A tier. The Undying Necrons are up on our list with the Saraptech Heavy Construct. This towering, spider-like automaton is just as towering as the Hierophant, though not as tough and packs more firepower. As far as stats go, it's a little less than the Hierophant with 14 toughness, a slower 10 inches, a 3 up save and a 5 up invuln, 24 wounds, 7 up leadership, and 10 OC. A little weaker on the stats than the Hierophant, but it has more guns and more consistent damage as well. With impressive range, keywords, and hefty damage, these guns are reaching pretty much anywhere on the board and probably fucking up whatever they're pointing at. You have only 1 melee weapon, but 2 profiles to tackle any sort of AP or AT situation you might find yourself in, with more consistent damage than we saw previously. It has the Titan walk ability to go through 4 inches or lower things, so we don't want to rehash that, but it does force everyone it's engaged with to take a battle shock test at the start of the fight phase. It doesn't do this at a negative or whatever, but it does give you the chance to ruin the strategy for your opponent who thought they might have a sick melee kill on their hands, or that wanted to fall back because they're a coward. Now, key difference here is the ranged weapons. You don't get all of this. The singularity generators are default, but can be replaced with 2 obliterators and 2 projectors. Not sure why you wouldn't do that, except for dealing with horde armies like guards or Tyranid. I guess the blast on the 2d6 weapons can come in handy. In terms of straight aura farming, the Saraptech takes the cake. In terms of how practical it is in the field, it's okay. I mean, none of these are particularly game-changing units. They're more cool point sinks than anything, but the Saraptech doesn't actually have a ton going for it besides how cool it looks and the consistent range damage. Its abilities are pretty mid, and if you hit it with some anti-vehicle type of weapons, especially if you have one with dev wounds, it's gonna go down pretty quick. I think the Heavy Construct fits comfortably in the B tier. The Imperial Man has a menagerie of god engines and lumbering war machines, but we're only going to do a few of them that you're most likely to see on the tabletop. We're going to start with a Knight Castellan. This absolute unit of a unit is meant solely for killing the shit out of other Titanic units like you're going to see in this video. Stats are pretty much what you'd expect for a Knight, but note that 5-up invuln is only against ranged attacks. Probably because GW doesn't expect this thing to move very much and get within engagement of anything else, which I suppose makes sense. But he does have 28 wounds and 10 OC, so if you do need to put him on a point, you should be fine. Take a look at these weapon options though. He comes with a Plasma Decimator, 2 Shield Breaker missiles, 2 Twin Melta Guns, a Twin Siege Breaker Cannon, and a Volcano Lance. You got enough range to basically reach anywhere on the board, minus those Meltas, because they're Meltas, and a ton of keywords to help in your reign of destruction. You can also swap out your 2 Shield Breakers and 1 Siege Breaker for 2 Siege Breakers and a Shield Breaker, depending on your VOD. If there's more infantry, your cannons are probably the right call. But like I said, this guy's meant for killing Titans. Your Volcano Cannon and Shield Breaker missiles are going to force other Titans, like the Saraptech, to rely solely on its invuln save. And with that 4-up dev wounds on Titanic models, you can seriously put the hurt on your target with that d6+1 damage. Now, you might be a little iffy on the casino dice damage, and normally you'd be right to worry. However, looking at the abilities, we have Titan Hunter, allowing us to reroll damage rolls against vehicles or monsters. So not even the Hierophant is going to escape your wrath. Our other ability is Ion Aegis, which is great for if you're running a Knight army, as it grants friendly armigers within 6 inches cover from ranged attacks. Few Knight models look as sick as this guy, at least in terms of firepower, as all Knights kind of look the same. I personally like mine to have those giant ass chain swords, but hey, can't have everything. But with the Knight Castellan, you can get pretty damn close. His abilities also make him an excellent leader for your Imperial Knight army as well. A little boring in terms of aesthetics, he makes up for it in what he can do, and it's probably the most viable option we'll go over in terms of practicality and points, clocking in at only 410. The Knight Castellan is going to be our first S-tier Titanic unit. Still in Imperial territory, up next we have the Baneblade of the Imperial Guard that clocks in at 450 points. Somehow more expensive than the Knight Castellan, the Baneblade is the premier battle tank of the Astra Militarum. It's got a ton of guns on it with a lot of keywords, so it can tackle just about anything you throw at it. By default, it comes with the Baneblade cannon, the Coax, Demolisher cannon, Heavy Stubber, 2 Las cannons, Twin Heavy Bolter, and 2 Heavy Flamers. You can also run it with 2 more Las cannons and 2 more Bolters or Flamers on top of it. Whatever approved version of this you vibe with. The Baneblade has built-in rerolls with Twin Link, crowd control with Blast, and has a gun that can pretty much tackle anything, much like the Knight, but with a little bit more of an even spread and extremely consistent damage across the board. It also has the Rolling Fortress ability, which grants any Astra Militarum models being targeted that are not fully visible because of the Baneblade the benefit of cover. That's any guard models, and this is a big ass tank, so you can cheese the shit out of this rule with careful positioning. In terms of looks, it's okay. It's a big ass tank, not a lot you can do with that. There are several different Baneblade variants, my personal being the Shadow Sword, but I figured we'd go with the standard one for this video. The Baneblade is certainly a utility unit that is actually a bit more feasible than some other Titanic units. You can move this guy up the field with your troops and other tanks and get a huge piece of mobile cover, which God knows guardsmen need all the help they can get in that regard. And with all the keywords and all the guns, it has an impressive amount of firepower, though not much of it is too crazy, but it is consistent. I think the Baneblade is a bit high on points and a little boring on aesthetics, but due to that high points cost, I'm going to give it a B tier. It's not too bad, it's not too great, it's just good. It really depends on the style of Imperial Guard you want to play. Chaos has its fair share of Titanic units. There's no shortage of Chaos Knights on the roster, but I wanted to go with something a bit more unusual. To that end, we're going to go with a Khorne Lord of Skulls at 450 points. Few things are as silly or as unique looking as this abomination of God, and I don't think I've ever heard a rumor that someone at the local shop has one of these, though there is a kit on the shelf. Anyway, stats are pretty similar to what we see across Titanic units, so this thing does move quite a bit slowly at only 8 inches. Has a pretty low OC for what it is. For a World Eater's unit, it has quite the array of guns, coming equipped with Gorestorm and Hades cannons alongside that big ass chain cleaver. You can also swap the Gorestorm cannon for a Demon Gore cannon or Ichor cannon, and you can replace the Hades cannon with a Skull Hurler, which sounds really ridiculous and silly. I don't care what the ideal loadout is, that needs to be the auto include. You can get a shitload of attacks regardless of what you choose, most with Blast, and that Hades cannon getting sustained 1, all with consistent damage and high AP. Strangely, you don't get a single melee buff, but I guess besides army rules or whatever, but the strike profile with such high AP and damage is going to whack most vehicles when just a couple attacks manage to win. Its ability is also kind of mid. If it destroyed any units, and at the end of the fight phase, it makes all enemies within a 6-inch radius take a battle shock test. I guess that can be pretty crazy if you're up against a high leadership army, but otherwise, super hit and miss. All that said, it certainly has a unique vibe to it, and for a World Leaders unit, it has an impressive amount of range consistency. The melee is nothing to balk at either, but it's about what you'd expect from a giant corn melee unit. I gotta give it an S tier in the looks because this thing is so fucking stupid and I love it. You just look at that little guy, it's so fucking dumb. And he's got good range, but 450 points? Maybe a bit much. I'm putting the Lord of Skulls in D tier because his ability is ass, his damage is good, but his points, cost, and stats are a bit rough to justify taking it in any reasonable list. Going back to our Dirty Xenos, we got an Eldari Wraith Knight for 435 points. Stats are about what you'd expect, but he's fast as fuck with 12 inches of movement, but also flimsy as fuck with 0 invulnerable save. Or so you thought. We'll get to that in a second. Because War Gear costs nothing in terms of points or sacrifice, you can give this guy a Scatter Shield to grant him a 4-up invuln save, and also subtract 1 damage from attacks to get through. JK though, because apparently this is default, alongside the Sun Cannon and his little grippers. Why can't they just make it an ability and part of the stats is beyond me. Who am I to question James' workshop? You can swap Sun Cannon for a Wraith Cannon if you want a massive AT gun with extremely swingy damage and no ability to reroll, or you can swap the Scatter Shield for one of these as well. Don't know why you want to do that and lose your 4-up invuln, because you'll fold like paper to any amount of AP, but whatever. You can also equip 2 out of 3 of the Scatter Laser, Shuriken Cannon, and Star Cannon. Its ability is pretty ass, not gonna lie. You get that ability to walk through terrain in units because you're tall, you can move through engagement but not end in it, and you can move through stuff taller than 4 inches, but in doing so, you must roll a d6, becoming battle shocked if the result is a 1. Climbing over a building is apparently a really traumatic experience for the Eldar. The damage potential for shooting is pretty solid, but that's not shocking from Eldar. I don't think a Wraith Knight's gonna change the course of the battle or anything in some drastic way, but it can reach out and touch someone with the guns, and would make one hell of a distraction card effects. It also looks sick as shit, but unfortunately that's about all it's got going for it. For 435 points, that really does seem a bit high. Drop this dude back 100 points, maybe 50, and it might actually be worth a piss. We're putting the Wraith Knight in the F tier. The dirty commies of the setting, the Tower up next with the goofy Storm Surge for 400 points. Tower known for obscenely good shooting, with the Storm Surge you won't find a better platform for dealing death at long range. With a nice 2-up and 4-up invuln, you've got something to make up for its rather low toughness and wound pool. Despite its monstrous size, Storm Surge is much more flimsy than it appears. However, it's not like you're going to be moving it all that much. It comes equipped with a cluster rocket system, destroyer missiles, pulse drive cannon, 2 twin Spartan missile systems, and twin Tau flamer. With all those big guns rocking the heavy keyword to grant a +1 to hit for a 3-up across the board. You can also swap the pulse drive for a pulse blast and the flamer for either an air burst or burst cannon. Its abilities grant that Titan walk thing with a 4-inch terrain we've seen a dozen times, but you can also ignore all modifiers to the hit roll. You can also get into a shootout with the Knight Castellan or any other Titanic unit with a Titan Killer ability, allowing you to reroll hits against enemy Titanic units or Tower units. What makes the Storm Surge so good, however, is its ability to benefit from the Tau Observer and Marker Light units, allowing you to ignore cover with Marker Light Guided and add 1 to your ballistic skill. Even better, Heavy adds 1 to the hit roll, meaning you can stack, as these are 2 different modifiers, and hit on a 2-up instead of a 3-up if you remain stationary. It can kill a lot, but honestly, I don't feel it to be overkill for smaller targets or even other Titans. For only 400 points, it's pretty great. It's easy enough to avoid if you're an infantry model, but other Titanic units and monsters on the taller and weirdly shaped side, like Magnus for example, are going to have an awful hard time staying out of line of sight. Given its crazy roll bonuses, solid abilities, and goofy ass shape and amazing points cost, we're going to stick it in the S tier. Even with its less beefy weapons, it can still do some damage against infantry, especially with all the blast. Though you could run a lot of other battlesuits for 400 points as well, but if you want to aura farm and also kill the shit out of stuff, look no further. Lastly, we've got an Orc Stompa for a whopping 800 points. Sorry, I said that wrong.
Lastly, we got an Orc Stompa for a whopping 800 points.
A pretty solid stat line, especially with that 2-up save and 30 wounds. The Stomper brings a ton of crumpin' to your table. Coming equipped with a Mega Chopper, 3 big shooters, 1 Def Cannon, 1 Scorcher, 1 Super Gatler, Super Rockets, and a twin big shooter. Now for Orcs, you're hitting everything on a 5-up, but to make up for that, you've got range and a metric ton of attacks across the board, with a ton of keywords. It's all fairly low damage though, with the exception of melee, of course. And again, 3d6 attacks on strength 14 and damage d6 ain't nothing to brush off either. Still, consistency and volume of fire are often how you'll prevail in any general game, as opposed to bringing down something with just 1 or 2 shots. Guard players know this firsthand. Individually, a lasgun isn't going to do much, but 2 to 3 squads of lasguns? There's a good chance you're going to seriously hurt something if you don't bring it down. It can also function as a pretty sizable transport, carrying 22 boys infantry. Bigger models take up more space, obviously. For its abilities, you have Wa Effigy, which grants a +1 to battle shock test for orcs within 12 inches, which is pretty good, as orcs tend to get battle shocked rather easily. Then you have the standard Titan moving ability we've seen 100 times already, and as with all orc units, the power is in the punch. That Mega Choppa is going to bring about the end of days for whoever is unlucky enough to be standing in front of it. With that strike profile, you're going to be wounding even other Titans on a 3-up, and 10 damage a hit is absolutely devastating. The Stompa is certainly the sort of unit you want leading the charge, and while I think 800 points is insane, it still serves as a pretty good centerpiece for your army and a great support unit for your boys, even if it is a little unwieldy. It's also just downright adorable. I mean, look at it. But honestly, as cool as it is, it's arguably one of the least effective units on this chart until you get into melee. Cool and cute factor are pretty up there, but not enough to save it from a pretty low D tier. And that's the list, y'all, with the Knight Castellan taking the top spot by being actually pretty useful and balanced for its points cost. A great unit for your Imperium of Man army, but an even better unit for Imperial Knights. Let's not forget that Storm Surge putting up some real competition for that top spot. I thought it'd be a lot of fun to do this and switch it up a little, because I don't typically see these sorts of units as the topic of conversation, and I wanted to explore them a little bit more, even just at a silly surface level. I don't have any of these myself, but I've considered picking up a Knight Castellan or that Saraptech just for a nice shelf piece. Do you have any of these units though, and how do they perform on the field for you, and where do you think they would be on this list? These dudes aren't always practical, but they do have their uses, even if they're limited. But at the end of the day, the rule of cool trumps all. List optimizations be damned, go silly, or go home. As always, drop a like if you like it, a subscribe if you really liked it, hit the notification bell so you never miss a video, and share it with your friends if you think they'd like it too. I'll see y'all in the next one.